They called Africa the Dark Continent, but only after they burned every library that held the light. What if I told you that before Harvard existed, before the British Museum claimed to preserve knowledge, there was a city in Mali, Timbuktu, with over 700,000 manuscripts on astronomy, medicine, law, mathematics, written in African hands, African minds, African ink. And then Europe came, and they didn't just take gold. They didn't just take people. They took knowledge. Because the most dangerous thing a colonizer fears is a black mind with a memory. For centuries, the world was taught Africa had no history, no science, no books, just tribes in the jungle. That lie was deliberate. Because if you want to enslave a people, you don't just chain their bodies. You erase their past so they forget their power. In 1897, British forces invaded Benin City, Nigeria. They looted over 3,000 artifacts, now in the British Museum. But what they don't display, the Royal Archives burned to ash. Thousands of palm leaf manuscripts, records of kings, medicine, trade, astronomy. Gone, not stolen, destroyed. Why? Because a people with a documented history cannot be called primitive. Let's go to Mali, 15th century. While Europe was still crawling out of the so-called Dark Ages, Timbuktu was a global center of learning. At Sankore University, scholars studied algebra centuries before it reached Europe, surgery using antiseptics and anesthesia, astronomy tracking stars with precision, law and ethics in Swahili, Arabic, and African dialects. One manuscript, a 16th century text calculating the movement of Venus, accurate to the day. And the libraries? Not one, not 10, hundreds, held by families like the Haidara bin Essaudi and Fondo, who guarded them for generations. One family alone, the Mama Haidara Library, preserved over 22,000 manuscripts, some dated back to the 1200s. This wasn't oral tradition. This was written, documented, advanced civilization. And then, colonial powers arrived. The French, the British. They didn't call it discovery. They called it civilizing. But here's the truth. You cannot civilize a people who taught the world. Let's talk about Alexandria. You've heard of the Great Library of Alexandria? The one that held all the world's knowledge? Destroyed by war? Lost to time? But ask, where was Alexandria? On the coast of Egypt, Africa. And who built it? A mix of Egyptian, Greek, Ethiopian, and Phoenician scholars. Yet history credits only the Greeks. The library's chief librarian, Eratosthenes, a North African scholar who calculated the Earth's circumference within 1% accuracy, 2,200 years ago. But you won't hear that in school, because the narrative demands civilization came from Europe, not from the continent that gave the world pyramids, calendars, surgery, and philosophy. Even Imhotep, the first known physician in human history, practiced medicine in Kemet, Egypt, over 4,000 years ago. His methods? Used in Greece 2,000 years later and credited to Hippocrates. Plagiarism on a continental scale. Today, over 300,000 African manuscripts sit in European archives, locked in basements in Paris, London, Berlin. The Bodleian Library at Oxford holds thousands, labeled exotic curiosities. The French National Library refuses to digitize many, citing preservation. But preservation of what? Stolen knowledge? And in Zimbabwe, the ruins of Great Zimbabwe, built with advanced stone engineering, were claimed by colonizers to be too advanced for black people. They said it must have been built by Phoenicians or Arabs. But carbon dating proved, built by Africans, 11th century. And their response? Burn the records. Rewrite the textbooks. Say it never happened. But the story doesn't end in ash. Today, families in Timbuktu risk their lives to smuggle manuscripts out of war zones. Scholars use AI and infrared scanning to recover text from damaged scrolls. Projects like UNESCO's Timbuktu Manuscript Project and the Hill Museum and Manuscript Library are digitizing tens of thousands. One manuscript recently translated, a 15th century text on vaccination principles, using controlled exposure to disease. Centuries before Edward Jenner. And in Ethiopia, the monasteries of Lake Tana hold ancient Gwizi texts on theology, medicine, and astronomy, still studied by monks who say, our knowledge was never lost, just ignored. Let's be clear, this wasn't accidental loss. This was systematic erasure. Because if you can make a people believe they had no past, they'll never imagine a powerful future. They burned Timbuktu's libraries. They stole Benin's archives. They dismissed great Zimbabwe. They credited African knowledge to foreigners. But here's what they couldn't destroy: the memory in the blood, the wisdom in the soil, the truth in the surviving scrolls. So ask yourself, what else did they erase? What genius was lost in the fire? And what could Africa have become if its libraries had been protected, not plundered? This isn't just history. It's reparation. It's reclamation. It's resurrection. Afrogenesis artifa protocol initiated. Searching for lost knowledge. Recovery mode, active. Legacy, restoring. The next time someone says Africa had no civilization, show them this. Show them Timbuktu. Show them the manuscripts. Show them the proof. Because the most dangerous weapon in history was never a gun. It was a book, and they feared it so much. They burned millions. But fire cannot kill ideas, especially not African ones. This brings us to the end of another chapter in the Afrogenesis story. If this moved you, if it made you question what you were taught, then do this. Hit the like button. Share this with someone who needs to see it. Subscribe, because the truth is just beginning to rise. We're not just telling history. We are rewriting it. Thank you for watching. And remember, erased history equals stolen power.